Amidst ongoing national debates over judicial legacies and progressive strategies, an extraordinary exchange unfolded at Georgetown University Law Center, one that bridges generations in the fight for equality. Tonight we present the complete story of the historic face-off between Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. What started as a pointed critique evolved into a profound lesson on advocacy and institutional change. Join us for this 40-minute in-depth report on how such moments illuminate the complexities of American democracy. The grand auditorium at Georgetown University Law Center grew completely silent. All eyes turned toward Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who sat upright in her chair on the stage. Though her frame was small and her health had faced challenges in recent years, her presence still commanded the entire room. Her sharp gaze, as piercing as ever, was fixed on the podium where Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stood. "Justice Ginsburg," Crockett began, her voice echoing through the hall with all respect to your legacy. "Your slow and cautious approach to women's rights has failed us. While you chose to work within the system, countless women continued to suffer. Your much-praised friendship with Justice Scalia is part of what's wrong with our politics today. Compromise with those who attack our basic rights is not justice. It is surrender." A wave of shock swept through the audience. Students exchanged stunned glances. Esteemed professors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Had a sitting congresswoman truly criticized the legendary notorious RBG right to her face? The 87-year-old justice didn't answer right away. Instead, she calmly removed her glasses and set them on the table in front of her. Her expression was neutral, but those familiar with her noticed the subtle tightening of her jaw, a rare sign that Ginsburg was angry. What came next would not only leave the room speechless but would also reshape how the nation viewed one of the most celebrated justices in American history, especially in light of current political divisions over court packing and reproductive rights. But before diving into this unforgettable confrontation that has captured the attention of legal scholars and political commentators across the country, amidst broader discussions on Supreme Court ethics and progressive impatience, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. This face-off between two powerful women highlights deep truths about justice strategy and the long struggle for equality, insights you won't want to miss in today's polarized climate. The Georgetown Law Symposium on Women and the Constitution had been designed to honor Justice Ginsburg's remarkable career. For over 60 years, from her early days battling discrimination as a young law student to her groundbreaking work with the ACLU Women's Rights Project, and later, her nearly 3 decades on the U.S. Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg had dismantled legal barriers to gender equality one case at a time. By 87, she had become a cultural icon. Her image appeared on mugs, t-shirts, and posters. Her workout routines became books. Her signature dissenting collar became a symbol of resistance. Generations of young women celebrated her as a feminist trailblazer who had transformed the law step by step, building progress through precedent, strategies that influenced landmark decisions and continue to shape debates on issues like abortion access and workplace equality. Yet not everyone was convinced her cautious approach was still effective in today's divided political climate, where conservatives have consolidated power on the bench and progressives push for bolder reforms. Some activists criticized her decision not to retire during the Obama administration, warning it gave conservatives the chance to claim her seat, a point echoed in recent congressional hearings on judicial term limits. Others questioned her well-known friendship with Justice Antonin Scalia, arguing that it softened the image of those who opposed fundamental rights, fueling discussions on bipartisanship versus principled resistance. Ginsburg rarely addressed such criticisms directly. Throughout her career, she chose her words carefully and avoided political arguments. She believed persuasion, not direct confrontation, was the best path toward lasting change, a philosophy rooted in her experiences arguing before all-male benches in the 1970s. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett represented the opposite philosophy. At 42, the freshman Democrat from Texas had quickly risen as one of the boldest progressive voices in Washington. A former civil rights attorney who defended Black Lives Matter activists, Crockett never hesitated to call out her opponents. Her fiery speeches on the House floor went viral, earning her a massive online following amid rising progressive movements. She was unapologetic, confrontational, and unwilling to compromise on core principles, traits that have made her a key figure in Democratic pushes for voting rights and police reform. The symposium had originally been planned as a bridge between two generations of feminism: Ginsburg's careful, strategic fight through the courts, and Crockett's passionate, confrontational push for immediate change. Professor Elena Kagan, then still at Georgetown before her Supreme Court appointment, had asked the event to stay focused on strategy, not personal attacks, reflecting broader academic efforts to foster civil discourse in legal education. But as soon as Crockett began her remarks, it was obvious she had no intention of sticking to those rules. Highlighting tensions seen in modern feminist debates, this clash was about far more than a disagreement between two women. It represented a deeper question. Should social change come gradually through careful legal work or through fearless, uncompromising demands? It raised debates about generational feminism and whether younger activists showed enough respect for those who had fought before them, issues that resonate in today's discussions on intersectionality and coalition building. For Ginsburg, it was her life's philosophy at stake. For Crockett, it was a chance to reject what she saw as outdated compromise with systems of oppression. The packed room of students, faculty, lawmakers, and journalists realized they were witnessing history, a rare public challenge to one of America's most respected justices, akin to pivotal moments in civil rights history. What about you? Do you believe progress comes from steady, strategic steps or from bold, direct confrontation? Share your thoughts in the comments about which approach has been most effective in advancing civil rights in U.S. history. At the Georgetown Auditorium, with its polished wood and portraits of legendary jurists, it had hosted countless debates, but none like this. Let me make my point clear, Crockett pressed on, sensing the room's unease. Your strategy of reaching across the aisle has only strengthened conservatives, while they've stripped away women's rights piece by piece. Crockett's voice grew sharper as she held up a sheet of paper. Your celebrated friendship with Justice Scalia gave legitimacy to his harmful views, she declared. Here is a list of his votes against women's rights, against LGBTQ rights, against voting rights. These aren't just abstract legal theories. These decisions harmed real people. Yet you still called him your best friend and even attended the opera together. The moderator, a Georgetown law professor who looked visibly uneasy, leaned toward the microphone. Congresswoman, perhaps we can turn to the legal substance. This is the substance, Crockett cut in quickly. When we act as if those who deny our humanity are just colleagues with different viewpoints, we normalize their oppression. Justice Ginsburg's careful step-by-step approach may have worked in the 1970s, but today rights are being stripped away far faster than they are won. She turned back to Ginsburg. And let's be honest, your refusal to step down during President Obama's administration was a political gamble that endangered everything you stood for. You risked the rights of millions because you wouldn't let go of power. Some in the audience flinched. A distinguished female judge sitting in the front row shook her head, visibly disapproving. Still, Crockett pressed on. And then there's Shelby County versus Holder, she continued, her tone fierce. That ruling gutted the Voting Rights Act, and you authored the opinion. The room buzzed with murmurs. Even those sympathetic to Crockett's frustrations recognized her mistake. Justice Ginsburg had in fact written a blistering dissent in that case, not the majority opinion. You have the wrong justice, Congresswoman, a voice called from the audience. Crockett faltered for only a moment before recovering. My larger point stands. The court has been tearing down civil rights protections while polite collegiality has failed to stop them. She fixed her gaze directly on Ginsburg. You once said women belong in every room where decisions are made. I agree. But when those decisions actively harm people, politeness is not a virtue. It is complicity. Incremental change is a luxury women of color and working women simply cannot afford. The tension in the auditorium was overwhelming. Younger law students who had grown up admiring RBG now sat torn between their deep respect for her and sympathy for some of Crockett's arguments. Older lawyers and judges, however, looked appalled, seeing the Congresswoman's words as blatant disrespect toward a legal legend, echoing broader concerns about civility and political discourse. Through it all, Justice Ginsburg remained motionless. Her expression was calm, her body still. The years she had spent honing self-control, facing prejudice and fighting battles she was told she could never win were evident in her composure. She didn't flinch, didn't interrupt, didn't show anger. The moderator attempted again. Perhaps we should take questions from the audience. I have one more point, Crockett insisted, refusing to yield. Justice Ginsburg, your dissents may be eloquent, but at the end of the day they are only dissents. They carry no legal power. They've been turned into slogans and tote bags, but they don't protect anyone. Women need more than beautiful words. We need justices who will not stay polite while rights are under attack. Finally, Crockett stopped. The moderator, clearly relieved, turned to the justice. Justice, would you like to respond to the Congresswoman's comments? The room went silent. Every eye turned toward the small, frail-looking woman sitting upright in her chair. Some expected her to decline politely as she so often had. Others anticipated a short diplomatic answer that would ease the tension without addressing the sharp accusations. But instead, Justice Ginsburg leaned toward her microphone. Her voice was soft but steady, carrying the familiar trace of her Brooklyn accent. I would be glad to respond to the Congresswoman's concerns, she said evenly. Debate is the very heart of democracy. She carefully folded her hands on the table, the light catching her famous dissent collar and ring. What we have here is a profound disagreement about how real, lasting change happens within a constitutional system. This is not a new debate. It has been part of every struggle for equality, from civil rights to gender justice. The audience leaned forward, captivated. One of the greatest legal minds of the century was about to defend not just her personal choices, but her entire judicial philosophy, drawing on decades of precedent that shaped modern law. Justice Ginsburg took a sip of water, each movement deliberate, her silence pulling the crowd deeper into attention. When she spoke again, her tone was quiet but commanding, a skill she had mastered years ago while arguing before a bench of men who frequently cut her off. Congresswoman Crockett argues that my approach to advancing women's rights is too slow, too patient, too willing to compromise. She points to my friendship with Justice Scalia as proof of weakness rather than strength, as if respect and civility erase principle. At that moment, she reached for a slim folder from the table beside her, something no one had noticed until now. If I may, she said, let me begin with a brief history lesson. When I first began challenging gender discrimination in the 1970s, Justice Ginsburg said softly, opening a folder of notes. The law was stacked firmly against women. A woman could legally be fired simply for being pregnant. Banks were free to deny credit cards to unmarried women. Public universities could openly reject applicants because of their gender. And in most states, marital rape was not considered a crime. She glanced toward Crockett, her gaze steady. I chose to fight that system step by step, case by case, not because I lacked courage or conviction, but because I understood how precedent shapes our law. Every victory becomes the foundation for the next. Looking directly at the Congresswoman, her voice gained strength. You describe these as small or timid steps. Let me remind you of Sally Reed. A mother denied the right to administer her son's estate simply because she was a woman. Or Sharon Frontiero, a lieutenant in the Air Force, denied the same housing benefits as her male colleagues. Or Stephen Wiesenfeld, a widowed father, denied survivor benefits he needed to care for his infant child. These were not abstract theories, Congresswoman. They were real people with real struggles,